Welcome to the New Mom Talk podcast, your go-to podcast for evidence-based answers to your burning questions about parenting. Join us as we dive into commonly Googled topics and hear from experts and real moms. Let's navigate parenthood together, one question at a time. Hi, everyone. Today we're going to talk about identifying food allergies in your little one. Really excited for this one because I think it's such a great topic that many parents talk about, not only during like starting solids, but also just throughout life when they get introduced to new foods, right? So that said, we have Dr. Akansha Ganju share all our knowledge. So I'll start off with asking, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. My name is Akansha Ganju. I'm an allergist and immunologist who currently specializes in food allergies. I work for a startup called Latitude Food Allergy Care. This is a network of clinics designed to provide the most evidence-based and innovative food allergy diagnostics and treatments. And one of the reasons I actually joined Latitude is its inspiring origin story, which I do think will resonate with a lot of moms out there. So our CEO and founder, Kim Yates, has a daughter who had multiple anaphylactic reactions to foods. And instead of just accepting the usual advice at that time, which was avoid the food and hope for the best, she was determined to find a better solution for her child. So she actually partnered with Dr. Kari Nadeau, who's a renowned food allergy specialist, and launched the first clinical trial at Stanford that treated multiple food allergies at once with a treatment called oral immunotherapy, or also known as OIT. And so her daughter was one of the first patients in that trial. And just to give perspective, her daughter, who had multiple life-threatening food allergies, now eats all those foods freely. So out of the success of that trial, Kim and then two other moms who were in that trial, Debbie and Julie, they partnered with board-certified allergists and created Latitude Food Allergy Care because they wanted to make that same transformative food allergy treatment accessible to more families. So now we have clinics in the Bay Area. We have multiple in New York. I personally helped launch their first Los Angeles clinic. We have 2 more clinics opening in LA this year. So it's a really exciting time in the food allergy world.
Wow, that is really amazing because, yeah, you do hear about a lot of kids that have these allergies, and the common one is peanuts. Can't have peanuts in certain schools, or once they reach grade school level, there's sometimes tables that are peanut free.
Yeah.
So that's so awesome. Well, let's go ahead and dive straight into it. Let's talk about some early signs that parents should look for when it might come to a possible food allergy. Like, what are some signs that you would see even as early as whether you're starting solids or if you are in grade school and you have a food for the first time?
Yeah, definitely. So the most common symptoms we're actually going to see in infants are going to be skin related. So we're thinking things like hives. So when I talk about hives, I mean like a mosquito-like bump on the skin or some kind of rash or a little bit of swelling. Another early sign that we'll see in infants normally is vomiting, and that vomiting is time dependent. So 1 to 2 hours within eating that food. And the one thing I want parents to know is that the first reaction your child has to food will likely most of the time will likely be very mild. So that means in those cases you can manage it at home, likely treat it with an antihistamine like Zyrtec. And if it is anything more severe, you're likely going to be able to get to emergency services or care with enough time. And so the reason I want to emphasize that is I know there's a lot of like scary misinformation out there, but I really want parents to feel confident and excited about introducing, their allergenic foods or any foods to their kid at home. It's a super exciting time for your kid. It's a huge milestone that they've hit, and it shouldn't be overshadowed by fear. So I just feel there's like a lot of fear mongering in the allergy world with introducing allergens, and you should feel confidence doing this at home.
I appreciate that you said that because as a first time mom, when you're introducing allergens, it is so scary, right? Like, oh my goodness, there's a reaction. What do I do if there is? Or maybe you even
Yes.
avoid doing that just because you don't want to potentially go through a reaction and you have no idea how to respond to it. So yes, so true on we're just kind of bombarded by all these scary stories or misinformation.
Yeah,
So
one of the biggest things I tell my parents is that, you want to change the conversation from one of fear to one of confidence. And a lot of that is just education. A lot of what I do in clinic is early introduction education, how to recognize the signs, how to know how to treat. But again, we have so much more information now than we did before. And we really do know that even in the worst case scenario, your kid has a reaction, you're likely going to be able to manage it and you should be confident in that.
Well, I love all of that because I actually do want to talk more about the differences between, say, a food allergy versus a food sensitivity versus how you could identify that it's just a normal digestive discomfort.
This is a great question because I see this in my clinic a lot that these terms are getting exchanged for different meanings, and we're using the term food allergy to actually mean a sensitivity. But in the allergy world, those two different terms have very different meanings to us. So when we talk about a food allergy, we're talking about something that involves your immune system versus a food sensitivity that's going to be more of a digestive issue in nature. So when you have a food allergy, basically your body creates antibodies against that food. So when you eat the food, your body looks at it and thinks, "Oh, this is something dangerous to me," mistakenly, right? It's not supposed to think that. And then it mounts an immune response against that food, which is what looks like that immediate, anaphylactic allergic reaction. While with a sensitivity, we're thinking more of your digestive system and not your immune system. One of the most important things I ask parents when they come to me when their child has a reaction is timing. And that's one way I really differentiate. So with the food allergy, the reaction is going to happen within 1 to 2 hours of eating the food almost always. Well, a sensitivity, you're likely going to get more of those delayed reactions like the bloating or the reflux that will be more delayed. And then the severity is different, right? So with the food allergy, do you need to carry an EpiPen? It's life threatening. It's something that's more of a safety concern. I kind of talk about it like cheat days. So if you have a sensitivity, you could, eat that food or your baby could eat the food. And yes, there will be some discomfort with it, but it's not necessarily dangerous. So you could have a cheat day, but you're not going to have cheat days with foods that you're allergic to because that's more of a safety concern and you do have to avoid it. So that's how I describe the differences. And on that point, another thing I hear a lot is our testing. So when you see an allergist or you see a pediatrician, some of the food testing that we have available is skin prick testing or blood testing. But I want everyone to know that those tests are specifically validated to test for food allergies. They're not validated or studied to test for food sensitivities. So you shouldn't be looking at them to diagnose your sensitivities.
Thank you for really diving down and breaking those two apart because it is so easy to use both terms to describe one idea, right?
Yeah.
Like, my child can't have this food because they have an allergy or, yes, a sensitivity. It kind of makes me think of a lot of people who love cheese and choose not to have cheese because it upsets their tummy. But then they'll have cheese because they love cheese.
Exactly. So that's a sensitivity. And I don't blame anyone. I understand that they're using the word allergy to, what they're trying to describe. But in the medical world, they're very different. Like the terms are very different for us.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I really like that you shared all of that. So let's now talk about some red flag reactions that would actually require some medical attention if we're introducing a new food. So I'm about to embark in this journey. I just told you I have, yeah, so I have a 4-month-old. And so, like, what are going to be some signs for anybody that is some red flags? Like, oh my goodness, I need to take my child to the ER or urgent care.
Yeah, so let's break this down into your mild and severe symptoms. So, mild, we're talking about, like I said before, the hives, the rash, maybe coughing or vomiting, something that could be monitored at home or treated with an antihistamine like Zyrtec. And then we talk about severe symptoms. When we say severe, I'm saying this is a reaction that we would likely recommend using an EpiPen if you had one or seeking medical attention. So, I break this down into 4 different scenarios. So one, does it involve more than one body system? So if your baby starts having hives and they vomit, so that's thinking skin and GI, so 2 body systems, that's going to be a severe reaction. Anything respiratory, so wheezing, shortness of breath, repetitive vomiting. So usually your baby will vomit once, they'll get out of their body and you're actually happy with that symptom. But if they have repetitive vomiting, so like 3 or more, would be a reason to also get some medical attention for that. And then also any mild symptom that's getting worse despite treatment. So say your baby is eating food, they start getting some hives on their face, you give them Zyrtec, but now the hives have spread to their whole body, so that symptom is getting worse. That would be another reason to seek medical attention.
Hi, everyone. It's your host, Mariella. I want to thank you for listening and share some ways to show your continued support. You can rate and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Share the show with friends and family. Buy me a coffee to help with the financial costs of running a podcast. Follow me on Instagram at newmomtalk.podcast. And finally, subscribe to my newsletter. Thank you for listening. How can parents just feel confident and prepared when introducing these common allergens? So, and especially if it's something that runs in the family. So, like, let's say I'm going to use peanuts again. If there's an older sibling that's allergic to peanuts, and now you have a little one. I myself love peanut butter, so that'd be so hard for me. You know how that can be such a scary time when you're like, but my oldest is allergic to, I don't know, shellfish, peanuts, eggs, whatever it is, and you want to make sure that your little one doesn't have that allergy or just is exposed to those foods.
Yeah, so we see this all the time where families are very scared that their oldest sibling has an allergy. They don't have nuts in the house. And then they're like, how do I feed it to my younger one? What if they have a reaction? Are they more likely to? So the thing with food allergies are they're definitely risk factors, right? So if someone has uncontrolled eczema when they're an infant, they're definitely more likely to have food allergies, family history, as you just suggested. But what we do know, and one of the only things we really know to prevent food allergies is actually early introduction. So we found out from a great study called the LEAP study about 10 years ago that the earlier we introduce the food, the more likely the kid is to not have an allergy. And they actually studied the highest of risk infants, so kids with, very severe eczema. And they found a significant reduction of food allergies if you started introducing the allergenic foods within 4 to 6 months of age. So even if you have a family history or a history of eczema or higher risk factors, the best thing you can actually do is introduce the foods early within that 4 to 6 months of age mark. So we definitely recommend not avoiding due to fear, but actually trying to get those foods into the diet and then keeping them in the diet consistently. And I really tell my parents if there's any concern, you should talk to your pediatrician or allergist before you start introducing solids or allergenic foods. Ask them if maybe they recommend having Zyrtec or an antihistamine around in your specific case. At the end of the day, like I said, the reassuring part is that it's likely going to be a mild reaction. You'll be able to, treat it. You should feel confident introducing the foods. I still unfortunately have parents who tell me that they're introducing peanut in the parking lot of the ER, but nobody should feel that way. That should not be the rhetoric around food introduction. And the other thing I want to say, because I get this question a lot as well, is that if you think your kid is a high risk for having a food allergy, we still don't suggest broad testing before you give them the foods. So the thing with our testing is that it can tend to lead to a lot of false positives, which means that you're unnecessarily avoiding foods that they might not have been allergic to. So the best way that we know if your kid has a food reaction or not, or how they'll respond to a food, is when they actually eat it. So we're definitely don't broad test kids because they would just leave our offices with a bunch of food allergies that they don't actually have. So you definitely just want to get the food into their diet.
Wow. I totally get why some parents like sit outside of the ER. We weren't one of them, but like, again, if you're a first time parent, it's such a scary process, right? Not only is it like you're exposing them to possible food allergies or all of these allergens, but then you also have to determine, are they choking or are they gagging? And then you just
Yeah,
freak out. So,
that's true. There's a lot going through your head. Absolutely. Yeah.
yes. And then if you're doing like baby led weaning or purees, like there's just so much. So I totally get it. So, yeah, but then my next one, let's talk about diagnosis. So, if a child is diagnosed, how early can they start treatment? Let's kind of go to the treatment facilities that you guys have.
So this is an extremely exciting time in the food allergy world. Like I said before, like with our founder, Kim Yates, she was told to avoid the food and she's like, I'm not taking that as an answer. So now we have actual treatments for food allergies, which we didn't before. So one of the main treatments we offer at Latitude is oral immunotherapy, so also known as OIT. This is where we give small increasing doses of the foods you're allergic to train your immune system to be less reactive and then over time significantly reduce the risk of having a severe allergic reaction. We also have new medications approved for food allergies. So last year, Xolair, which is a biologic injectable medication that you get every 2 to 4 weeks, this was approved for multiple food allergies and basically increases your threshold of reactivity. And what we know now is that the sooner you start treatments like oral immunotherapy, the better they work. So we know that if we can safely introduce these foods into your kids' diet while they're younger with OIT, the more likely you are to actually reverse that allergy over time. So at Latitude, for example, we do treat patients of all ages, but we have a 97% success rate with OIT under the age of 4. So we start as young as 6 to 8 months of age. And I would say in this day and age, if someone is still telling you that you should be avoiding the food, then you should seek a second opinion and find an allergist who specializes in food allergy, who's able to start these treatments early.
That would be just so hard to just avoid something because then we go out in this world and just because you're allergic to something, I say this all the time. My son loves peanuts. He doesn't have a peanut allergy, but we can't bring it to a lot of places and we're predominantly plant-based. So it's such a bummer that, we're accommodating everybody else's needs and our needs aren't always accommodated. But that's not reality. You can't just go around just avoiding.
It's not reality. And even so that's your perspective, right? And I agree with that. And even from a perspective of someone who has allergies, you can't control every scenario around you. You can't expect everyone in every restaurant not to carry nuts. And so that's why treatment is so important and so exciting because at the end of the day, you cannot control every situation you're going to be in. You're not going to be able to control every situation your kid is going to be in. So if you're able to get that level of protection or get this food back into the diet, that's the best situation.
Yeah. Well, finally, my last question. Do you have any other tips, suggestions, or recommendations?
Yeah, so my goal overall, the goal at Latitude is really to give families confidence when it comes to food allergies. Just kind of how we talked about before, no one should have to live in fear of eating at a restaurant or flying or going to school or attending a birthday party. The diagnosis itself is not just a safety concern, but it is psychologically very hard for a parent and even these kids. We have kids come to us, they're crying because they can't have donuts at school with their friends. They're feeling left out at school. I actually hate the peanut free table because I think it's very isolating for children psychologically. Also, it doesn't really account for all of the food allergies that are out there. It's not just peanuts. But it's better to just treat the kids so they can feel like they can have a normal life. It's really exciting to be at Latitude where we're able to see how far these patients come with OIT. We just did an ice cream challenge in clinic the other day where, we had a child who was milk allergic. So anaphylactic reaction to milk, which is so hard to avoid. It's in everything. But she was like, I just want to have ice cream with my sisters. So, she got to a point where we were able to give her ice cream and she had ice cream for the first time in clinic. And it was a very, very exciting time for everyone. So I just want families to know that even feel confident introducing the foods, but even if you do have a reaction, try to find an allergist as soon as you have a food reaction and know that there's treatments that are available now, like oral immunotherapy, so you can live a safer and more normal life. And that's really why we created Latitude Food Allergy. We want to help families navigate the space. We want them to get the most up-to-date guidance and treatment. I know it's a confusing world. And I know that people get conflicting information even between different doctors. And so we really want to be there to help guide patients with, the most evidence-based and up-to-date information.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And yeah, I totally agree that the whole like just avoid something is just not reality. So having this as an option and knowing that it's out there is so amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, education and knowledge of this is power at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have all of your information linked in the show notes. So anybody that wants to contact you, wants to learn more about the treatment and your different locations. I'll have all of that in the show notes. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and talking about this super important topic.
Thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next week for our next episode. You can find us on Instagram for more updates and tips. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and give us a review if you like us.